the Lake District. Now, though, it's time for today's Focus. Focus then, and we're reporting on the misery for some in Egypt today since the overthrow of Mohamed Morsi. But the report is not about Egyptians, it's about Syrians. There are an estimated 250,000 Syrian refugees in Egypt, and they say they're being stigmatised, accused of supporting Morsi's Muslim Brotherhood, some media even depicting them as the enemy from the inside. Well, our correspondents Sonia Dridi and Catherine Stapley have met with a Syrian refugee who showed them what life is like.
It's a 45-minute drive through the desert from Cairo to 6th October City, and this housing estate is now home to hundreds of Syrian families who fled the fighting in their war-torn country. Abu Mahmoud left Aleppo for Egypt in January 2012 with his wife and 3 children. But after the ouster of Mohamed Morsi following the June 30th protests, Egyptian attitudes towards Syrians changed, and many are leaving again.
Before June 30th, there were approximately 310 families living here. But since last Friday, this figure is down to 174 families. People have left to go to Italy illegally. Some have even returned to Syria.
Syrians in Egypt say they're now facing unprecedented harassment from both the authorities here and some Egyptians who see them as siding with the Muslim Brotherhood. As we filmed Abu Mahmoud, angry Egyptian residents from the neighbourhood tried to stop us. Most of their anger is directed at Saleh, an Egyptian activist who works with Syrian refugees and who brought us to Mahmoud.
انت بتسوق يعني سمعة البلد ولا ايه؟ مالكش دعوة بيه انت عايز تصوره بجوشك. انت مصري ولا ايه؟
We left quickly as a crowd gathered, threatening to confiscate our camera. Abu Mahmoud was too frightened to take us to his home, but agreed to talk to us in the car.
The incident you've just witnessed is one of the most basic problems that Syrians suffer on a daily basis. They know we're Syrians, and when they said, he's a Syrian, so go film in his house, it basically means because you're a Syrian, you should only stay in your house.
He tells us his wife and children, too, are now scared of going out.
One day my wife came home, very frightened. Her face was pale. She said, I'm not leaving the house again. She had just jumped out of a tuk-tuk with our little girl because the driver was about to kidnap them. Some children have even started beating our kids, so our kids are like prisoners at home. We're really living in fear now.
Again, the interview was cut short. This time the police surrounded our car, called by the local residents, and we had to leave the area. Back in Cairo, Saleh tells us the Egyptian media are to blame for the anti-Syrian feeling here, and that's why Abu Mahmoud's neighbours stopped us filming.
The reason I believe they did so is because of the media. The media framed all the Syrians as Muslim Brotherhood supporters, which is completely wrong. Plus the nationalism theme the media is doing right now, actually. The people, when they stop the Syrians from talking and expressing themselves, they believe they're doing a favor for Egypt. It's becoming unsafe for Syrians, unfortunately, to be in Egypt.
For many Syrians, the dream of finding refuge in Egypt has been shattered. They're now prepared to risk life and limb to get out. Their new destination? Europe.
Well, we're going to take you to Cairo now, speak to our correspondent there, Catherine Stapley. Catherine, we saw there the harassment refugees are getting. The authorities, though, you would say, making it also very difficult for them to stay in Egypt.
Yeah, well, when Syrians first arrived here, they didn't need visas to come into the country. But when the military-backed government took over in July, the authorities changed the rules. And now Syrians need to actually have not only visas, but security clearance before they even arrive in the country. And what that's meant is that there's been some random checks on Syrians already here, and many of them hadn't even bothered to get the proper official documentation because they simply hadn't needed to. So this has meant that there's been some arrests and deportations. Now, the UN are also reporting that security forces have been doing door-to-door checks in certain neighbourhoods, like in the 6 October city that we saw in the report there. They've been grilling landlords, and then they've been arresting Syrians in their own homes. Now, another problem that the Syrians told us about that we spoke to, they said they've had incredible difficulty in registering their children at state schools here. They've been turned away and said that they should go and register them at private schools. Now, of course, private schools cost money, which is something a lot of these refugees simply don't have. They're relying on handouts from local NGOs here.
So why would you say have attitudes changed so significantly towards those Syrians in Egypt there?
Well, last June, before Mohamed Morsi was deposed, he held a rally in solidarity with the Syrian opposition. He denounced Bashar al-Assad's regime and severed ties with Syria. And so that really stuck in people's minds, and Syrians became associated with the Muslim Brotherhood. And then when Mohamed Morsi was deposed and there were these protests in support of him, some Syrians were arrested at those protests, and that really didn't do the refugees here any favours. And also, really, Egypt is in the grip of a nationalistic fervour that tips over into xenophobia sometimes here. The military have been warning about external plots to destabilise the country, and the media have really picked up on that and are blaming Syrians for it. They're saying, we had one very popular talk show host who gave Syrians a 48-hour deadline to leave the country, and he asked his viewers to go out and arrest Syrians and hand them over to the police.
Catherine, thanks very much. Catherine Stapley in Cairo there. I'm sure it's a story we'll come back to here on France 24. That was today's focus. Well, that's all from me for now on Live from Paris. I'm back, of course, in an hour, though, with another edition. Chris Moore will be here next, though. We'll have the latest from our correspondent in Damascus, Lucy Fielder, shortly. That's all after the break in the weather on France 24. Stay with us.